It takes a lot to catch me off guard while doing research for history these days. Oftentimes when I'm researching for videos, I've come to anticipate things that are kind of outlandish, like how Maui dies or Irish sticky horses that drown and eat kids. But every now and then I read about an event that completely catches me with a left hook. Today I want to take you all briefly to 15th century Sweden for the case of a man named Sven Andersson and the history of a Scandinavian monster by the name of the Bergsra. Most cultures that live closely alongside nature have stories of why people go missing. In England, there are a number of phenomena like fairies whisking people away or having them join their dances for an indefinite amount of time. In some Inuit cultures, whistling at the aurora will cause the gods to grab you and take you to their land forever. In Japan, this phenomenon is known as kamikakushi, or to be hidden by the gods. A number of Japanese yokai exist to explain this phenomena as well. In Sweden, there is the phrase bergtagen, or to be taken by the mountains. From this came the belief in certain creatures that made the mountains their homes. Most famous of these in the Norselands are the trolls. The name troll was kind of a catch-all term for monster, similar to how the words goblin or demon can refer to the mythical species or any monstrous creature. Trolls, even after being denoted as their own species, are attested to having a wide variety of forms, from being unsightly hairy creatures with a towering size to beautiful humanoid to looking nearly identical to an average person. We will be focused on the middle one for today, as we talk about the mythology of the Bergsra. It should be noted that Bergsra are not necessarily trolls in the modern sense, but rather are closer to a type of mountain spirit, the Ra in the name meaning a warden-like spirit for an area, and Berg being a word for mountain. So, in other words, they are guardians of mountains. They live in their mountainous domains with their families and occasionally fraternize with the local trolls. If a traveler is out in the mountains, then sometimes the Bergsra will take it upon themselves to either bring that person back to their home where their fate is ultimately unknown, or they are simply just killed by the Bergsra or the trolls around it. Trolls are known to eat people, so this would explain the lack of a body. For all of these phenomena together, they are referred to as bergtagen. Now, as we have advanced as a species, the logic of it being mountain spirits stealing people away naturally starts to diminish. After all, with no definitive evidence, it's nearly impossible to say what happens to these unfortunate souls. Well, apparently it can't be all that mysterious, because in 1960, a farmer reported that his farmhand, a Mr. Sven Andersson, would vanish for days at a time into the mountains. Whenever he would reappear, he would seem exhausted and drained, which eventually caught the eye of the local parish minister, a man named Petrus Kellander. The minister approached the farmer, a Mr. Lars Johnson, and asked why his employee always seemed so exhausted. Johnson told the minister about the vanishings, which frightened him so bad that he went and interrogated Andersson about it. Andersson initially told the minister that one day in the fall a goat had wandered into the mountains and he had gone after it. Having no luck in his search and exhausted from his efforts, he lay down beside a tree to rest. He was then approached by a mysterious, beautiful woman in white clothing who brought him to her mountain home. There, she gave him food and drink and had sex with him for several days before allowing him to leave. The woman apparently resembled a satyr to a degree, being hairy from the navel down. Andersson would go back to meet the woman every so often at the spot of their first meeting. The minister forbade Andersson from returning to the spot and had him monitored to make sure that he didn't leave to go. While Andersson himself did not return to the mountains, the people responsible for watching him began talking amongst themselves and the other townsfolk, and rumors began to spread about Andersson's fantastical fornication. Eventually, local law enforcement caught wind of it and had him thrown into prison and forced to stand trial. At the trial, he gave greater detail on his excursion in the mountains. Supposedly, he had fallen asleep in the hollow of a tree because he had been searching for the goat as the sun had set and didn't want to risk traveling the mountains alone at night. As he was preparing to sleep, the woman in white approached him and offered to return the goat to him if he would come with her. He agreed and followed her into the mountains. As if by some sort of magic, the mountains themselves gave way and opened a door to the pair to enter inside, where they found themselves in a massive, well-lit room with tables and beds along the walls. He followed the woman past groups of other people, all of which he described as being incredibly beautiful and wearing gorgeous clothing. She escorted him to a table where she fed him and gave him something to drink. After he had eaten his fill, she took him to a bed and the two had sex together. At some point, he came to and was no longer in the mountain. Now, the court needed to find a way to confirm that Andersson was not just telling some tall tales and getting the town into a buzz, so they decided to inspect his penis to see if they could find any evidence of his claims. What you look for in something like that is completely unknown to me. Maybe a rug burn from shagging a satyr? I couldn't tell you. The resources on this are already limited and mostly in Swedish, so the nitty-gritty details are being kind of floated here. Regardless, they found something that they deemed to be satisfactory evidence to confirm Andersson's story, allowing them to follow up with a conviction. Now, at this time in Sweden, actual belief in the Bergsra wasn't exactly flourishing. It was viewed as being somewhat antiquated and, more importantly, unchristian, so it wasn't really a top topic. However, anything that didn't appear to be natural can be easily equated to the work of demons, and the action of having sex with a demon immediately makes this a prime candidate for being a succubus. For the major kicker, having sex with a demon was punishable by death in Sweden, as it was a direct affront to the Christian god. So, Sven Andersson was sentenced to be executed for his tryst with a troll. Now, while it is said that he was executed for this, it is somewhat ambiguous and up in the air. There are official records saying that he was executed, but no actual confirmation. What most certainly did happen, though, is that a man in Sweden, knowing full well that he would be killed for making the claim, admitted to having intercourse with a mountain spirit. He served to gain nothing from that admission and very likely was killed for it. So what really happened? Well, I've got a couple of theories as to what may or may not have happened. The first, most disturbing, and most likely of all of them is that he probably shagged a goat in the mountains and would rather claim that he found a mythological figure and did the deed, rather than admitting to being Welsh. This would also go along well with the court inspecting his body, searching for evidence that he had had sex with a woman who was hairy from the waist down. If there is a logical explanation for this tale that isn't just him being crazy, it's probably this. For those of you who are familiar with the supernatural, the idea of being approached by a mysterious woman and taken to an area inaccessible to normal humans in what is like a dream state is very reminiscent of alien abduction. There are tales of people being abducted with the purpose of crossbreeding between humans and aliens that span across centuries, and so it's possible that this falls into that category as well. Entering into the mountains may have been a way of describing entering a camouflaged craft as opposed to physically entering into a mountain. Other abduction scenarios also describe certain alien species as appearing to be humanoids that are exceptionally beautiful. This is, of course, a very fringe theory, but the dots do make some connections if you're a hyper-paranormal nerd like me. Finally, it is very possible that he was just hallucinating. Sweden is host to a number of natural psychedelics, and it is possible that while he was in the mountains, Andersson ate some by mistake or was desperately hungry. It could be that these were growing in the tree hollow that he crawled into to sleep, and he inhaled the spores causing the hallucinations. This one is a bit iffy as well, because one would imagine that if you grew up in the mountains of Sweden in the late 1600s, you would have been taught not to eat certain things. That said, the knowledge of local flora may have been kind of up in the air for a 15th century peasant, but who knows. This is possibly one of the most bizarre stories that I have ever found, and it's not exactly in the realm of content that I normally cover. That said, stories like these are fascinating and I love reading about them, and I also hope that you enjoyed listening to this one. Thank you so much for watching, I really do appreciate it. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Check the description for the links to my Discord, Twitch, and Twitter, but for now guys, keep your chin up, peace.